My fish fam, it's Nikachu, Merfolk Master, and today I would like to talk about the state of Merfolk in 2026. Too long didn't read, it's bad. It's pretty bad. You know what? I've been casually playing Merfolk for the last few months, but now it's RCQ season. I have to get into the groove. I need to build this deck in order to beat the current metagame, and it looks near damn impossible. Now, before I give up all your hopes, I'd like to give you my analysis and where I think the roadmap for Merfolk can go into the future. So, first things first, we have to look at this metagame, and this metagame, it's not good, all right? The metagame is atrocious. The top deck is Boros Energy, and Boros Energy, by all means, completely eats our lunch. It is a very aggressive deck, going down very, very early with Ocelot Pride, Guide of Souls, Rogvan. These are all like must-answer cards on turn one. And the problem being, we don't even have enough removal in our deck to even defeat these cards on turn one. We don't even have like a lot of creatures we can put in play on turn one. If we're on the draw with Aether Vial, we're gonna get smashed. And they like followed up with a Johnny, which can turn into a Planeswalker that shoots down our creatures. Flage kills our creatures. Goblin Bombardment kills our 1 toughness creatures, and so on. So this deck eats us at every single angle, and we all know the pain point of Boros Energy. We have to basically get really lucky that they have a bad hand, and maybe we can Harbinger the Seas them out of the game. But they have to have a really unlucky start for us to have like any chance versus this deck. But it goes beyond, goes further than that. So Boros Energy is a very popular deck. You have to beat it in order to expect to win a big tournament. But even then, you know, usually there's some other decks that we can beat. But unfortunately, a lot of the decks that we can beat, and I do think we can beat them. I mean, I think actually if I really bend my 75, I can beat Boros Energy. The problem is the decks are attacking on such different angles that our tools versus any particular deck has no overlap with the other ones. Like if I go like 16 Seas versus Boros Energy, Just Guy Blink could like just laugh at me and it's like, well, I don't care. I can like put a Solitude in play and then consign the Evoke trigger and still have a Solitude in play. They can play Riddler, so they can still play a game even though I have the Spreading Seas plant. Same thing with Affinity. Affinity doesn't care. What I Seas claim their Urza Saga, no big deal at all. Same thing, Ruby Storm does not care about the Seas plan because all they need is 1 red mana and they ritual and go off to the races. So you've got Just Guy Blink, which I would think actually our most traditional deck is best suited to beat. We've got Mistcaller just in case they want to blink anything. They have Islands, so Island Walk Lords actually work out outside. Like that's like the only real island deck that we can try to leverage these cards against, and the deck is not super fast that we're getting blown out. So I actually think Jeskai Blink, despite what a lot of Merfolk players think, I think that's our best matchup of like the super top decks. But you know, if you want to beat Ruby Storm, then we need to be hard on the combo side, which we can, and that's probably also, that is like the only range that there's overlap. Like, yes, Hexcatcher is good, some 1-drops, some Lords, a bunch of counter spells. That works versus Ruby Storm. It can work versus Amulet. It can sort of work versus Gorios. Definitely works versus Neobrand. Can work versus Belcher, Living End. So that is the only range that is like we are good versus. But then there's now, so we've got like the super aggro deck, we've got a Blinky deck, we have another super aggro deck, Affinity, that's fast for a different reason. But then we have a big mana deck with Eldrazi-tron. And if it's not Eldrazi-tron, it could just be mono green Eldrazi. And they're ramping super fast. They've got the soul lands. Not only that, like everything has a cast trigger. Okay, sure, I've consigned to memory, but if I'm consigning their threat plus the cast trigger, then I'm not deploying to the board. And like, what am I going to do about the next creature? All their creatures in this Eldrazi-tron deck, they completely outclass us. Even Glaring Fleshraker is a must-kill creature. Thought-Knot Seer, Devourer of Destiny, Sire of 7 Deaths. Ugin, Eye of Storms is terrifying, and if they have enough mana, maybe they'll just get us dead with the Karn the Great Creator. But there's other versions of this Eldrazi deck with the Sowing Mickle Spawn, again, Devourer of Destiny, Sire of 7 Deaths. Very, very strong deck. And we can't keep anything on the board either because of the damn Kozilek's command. And then what do we got here? Domain Zoo. I mean, it's somewhat of a mid-range deck, but they also have free wins in the form of the what's it called? They got some free wins with Doorkeeper Thrall into Flage, or they just have Sign of Draco as a result of Leyline of the Guild Pact very early on in the very early on in the game. So sometimes our interaction isn't even going to interact with them. And then there's the case. So like, if I want to beat any of these decks, we need like a very specific build. So like the combo decks, that's great. We got all the tools for the combo decks. Between Consign to Memory, Mystical Dispute, Force Negation, Counterspell, Hex Catcher, Tishana's Tidebinder. That's the only overlap we have. These tools are very bad versus everything else. Try using Tishana's Tidebinder in the Boros Energy matchup. Like, you can't... Were you going to counter one trigger from Goblin Bombardment? A lot of the necessary triggers happen very early on, like Oscillate Pride, Guide of Souls, Ajani, before we even get this thing out. Then if we have 3 mana up, they're pretty wise up on our Tishana's Tiebinding, and they're going to be very careful about playing anything into it unless they already have an answer. There is another subtle thing that I realized. The value of Dismember has gone down. And I'll tell you what, like what can you dismember in this game anymore? So like there's nothing worth dismembering in Boros Energy except for the 1-drops, which is not great for us anyway because we shoot ourselves in the foot for 4 damage. So we're at like 16 life. I mean, they're just laughing to the bank. Like, what am I I think our best, like again, I think Jeskai Blink is like our better matchup because we can like dismember Ragavan, Felia, we can dismember Casey Jones in response to a blink of it, Dismember in response to blinking it, hitting Solitude in response to blinking it. But then like what else? It's so narrow, and like you can't dismember Flage. There's like some decks there's just nothing to dismember. Like what am I going to dismember an Amulet Titan? I can't dismember dismembering Arboreal Grazer is useless. Primeval Titan's useless. Aftermath Analyst is useless. They want it in the graveyard. So what are we dismembering? So I realize our own removal spell is actually, it's weak. It's quite weak. There's just less things to dismember than there was before. Neobrand, there's like nothing to dismember in this deck. Domain Zoo actually has a good chunk of cards. You can get the Ragavan, Doorkeeper Thrall, Territorial Kavu. But again, like in the most of the decks with the creatures, they're also blasting you for a lot of damage. So this is a prowess deck with like Dragon Race Chandler, Swift Spear, or Slickshot Show Off. You're not doing yourself a whole lot of favors using Dismember versus this deck. I mean, it's just going to be a huge pain point. It's pretty useless versus... I wouldn't say completely useless versus Belcher because you can hit the Tameshi, Reality Architect, but they'll also play Tameshi. They can also play around Dismember by playing Tameshi the moment that they intend on comboing off, and in response to the Dismember, they'll just go off. So very, very awkward there. So I realize like the value of some of our classic cards, because that's what I'm going to do. Like, when we are, I always try to evaluate, well, okay, why isn't this deck working anymore? What's the problem? And no one has any results with this thing. Nobody else. Like, no one's even getting lucky with like 5-0s or anything like that. And you can even see it in my own videos. And, when it's off season, maybe I don't care very much. Well, now I care. I'm always a believer of adjusting and adapting the deck, and we were hoping for some good tools from Lorwyn Eclipse, but none of them are of a modern power level. I'm very sorry for the Azorius players out there that were so excited and looked forward to turning this into an Azorius deck. Didn't happen. Not even close. None of those Merfolk. At least maybe there's a blue-white deck out there, but it's not going to help. It's not going to come with any of the help coming from Lorwyn Eclipse. And now you might ask me, have we ever been here before where like, Merfolk's getting beaten down so much? And to be honest, yes. We have been here before. I would say late 2017 to early 2018 was probably the previous time that was the roughest for me with this deck, because lo and behold, the best deck in the format at that time was something called Humans, Modern Humans, and it also had a very large share of the top of the metagame, and it was the deck to beat. And it was a deck very similar to Boros Energy, just absolutely kicking our ass because it was just faster. Like all their turn one plays were very menacing, whether it was Champion of the Parish, Noble Hierarch, or Ether Vial, and they were just a much more aggressive, interactive, everything. They do everything better than us. And the worst thing about that is that because they're the top deck, everyone trying to beat humans will pack extra hate versus us. And we are in a similar position right now where Boros Energy is the top deck, and playing with our meandering like if you're a creature based deck like this, I mean, you're just running right into Hell's Fury. And I second and third guess things like Lord of Atlantis and Mass of the Pearl Trident. These cards are useless if you do not have Island Walk. Like, you need Island Walk to make these cards useful. And we have a lot of non-island decks in the metagame. Like, Boros Energy doesn't have any islands. Jeskai Blink has... Okay, this is the only one with the islands. Affinity, they sometimes have an island if they're going to put it out there. But outside of that, like, okay, maybe Goryo's Vengeance. But they're sort of a pseudo-combo deck, so they may or may not even have anything in play. Okay, Domain Zoo also has some islands. But the top decks, you want them to have islands. You want some easy attacks against those Eldrazi decks, but there's nothing easy. It's all very, very hard. And putting Island Walk effects in the main deck are also very difficult, because Spreading Seas, it's a bit clunky, it's a bit awkward, and sometimes you can just tempo yourself out. Turn 2, Spreading Seas. Turn 3, they just go ham. I mean, they can still play Flage. Like, there's nothing mana intensive in this game anymore. Everything just costs 1 color mana and a bunch of generic. Not to mention Harbinger of the Seas is very soft and fleshy and can die at a moment's notice to any removal spell, which there are many mana efficient and also free removal spells in the format. So what are we going to do? I don't really feel like lying down and dying. And by the way, like, it's not like Merfolk is completely unplayable, but I mean, I play this deck. I don't play this deck because it's Merfolk and I just want to play a Merfolk deck. Like, this channel was born from the fact that, I can win with this deck. I can reasonably win tournaments with this deck. And one of the reasons I've been the authority on Merfolk is because when the metagame changes, I change. I was the first person to gut Curse Catcher a long time ago. I've gutted Master of Waves. I gutted what other cards that we had? Or I gutted Silvergill Adept. We didn't see Silvergill Adept for a long time. Now Silvergill Adept is back. There's a lot of changes that have been mutated from this deck. Like, we used to play with Merfolk Trickster, Harbinger of the Tides, but over time those cards got bad. Like Harbinger of the Tides, what do I want to bounce anything in the metagame right now? Everything has an ETB. It'll come back worse than before. Or it's too mana efficient. There's nothing super clunky that has no value when coming back. So anyway, Harbinger of the Tides isn't any good anymore. So how do we adjust this now? Because the one toughness is still weakness. There's still Bowmasters out there. There's Goblin Bombardment. There's Lava Dart from the Prowess deck, which makes these value cards that I would like to play just very, very weak versus them. So what are we gonna do? So I try to, first things first. What is working? What is working? What is not working? Do you know what's very interesting to me? We take something like Dimir Midrange, which is maybe the closest thing that the closest deck that's maybe parallel to us, because they're sort of a slow tempo-y deck and so on. They are not even a top dog themselves. They're very, very, very low on the metagame. What's a problem? Well, Fatal Push, it can kill a lot of things, but it doesn't kill everything, right? Like, or even if you kill a Flage, like, Flage can come back. If you can't kill Riddler, for example, because it's too expensive. You can't kill a Solitude. You can't kill, or even if you try to kill something from Boros Energy, they might sack it in response at your face. So, like, a lot of removal, even the deck that plays with removal spells, traditional removal spells, is very, very low, because playing on that angle it's just not worth it. Like, you can't Fatal Push also a Devourer of Destiny. So one thing that I thought was interesting is that there isn't really any big Fatal Push deck right now. because the creatures are just so big. Like everything that comes out of Neobrand or most of the cards from Gora's Vengeance. I understand this can play like a tempo deck with Psychic Frog, but you can't. What are you gonna do versus Quantum Riddler? What are you gonna do versus Solitude? What are you gonna do versus Atraxa? Nothing. So those removal, like a lot of traditional removal spells, have become bad. Just really, really bad. And that seems to be what's happening at the top of the board. Look at Jeskai Blink. Like a lot of this stuff has protection from traditional removal, with whether it be Quantum Riddler, Solitude, and Flage is incredibly resilient. You can kill Ragavan, but it's also a type of card that you play turn 1, and if it connects just once, or it puts so much pressure on your opponent if they're on the play that it's worth forcing your opponent to have that removal spell turn 1. And of course, like against Eldrazi, there's not a whole lot. You can kill like Thought-Knot. You might be able to hit Thought-Knot Seer, assuming they don't take the removal spell from your hand first, Glaring Fleshraker, but you're not going to hit Devourer of Destiny or the Sire of 7 Deaths, or any other sort of giant creatures. So I noticed, okay, so like big creatures, good. Big creatures, good. High toughness, by the way, also good. There's a reason Riddler is a very popular card. Like I said, our Dismembers are no good, right? Well, that's because like there's a lot of must-kill creatures at a super high toughness. 6 toughness seems to be like the new, I don't know, 4 toughness for that matter. So if you're really high on toughness, which is why Flage is good. So Flage, we got Flage, we got Quantum Riddler. Having high toughness is almost mandatory. All the top decks seem to be very high on high toughness. Or in this case, when it comes to affinity, they have Kappa Cannoneer, which you can't even target in the first place. Would love to play the card, but I can't. Or you go super wide, like with Pinnacle Emissary, or the weapons manufacturing. Or you have Krang. Well, Krang has 4 toughness. You can kill that with Dismember. But you can't, but you can't kill that with Fatal Push. Have no chance of killing Kappa Cannoneer with Fatal Push either, because they're just super outrageously expensive cards. So high mana cost high mana cost, and also, but most importantly, high toughness matters. High toughness matters. What's the interaction looking like? Well, playing for free seems to be really good, right? Jeskai Blink does almost everything for free. They play Felia to blink something in play to get it, to let it, like Quantum Riddler, to keep it for free, or keep their Solitudes around. Or not, I shouldn't say keep their Solitudes around. They have to keep it around anyway. But they play Solitude for free. They play, I wouldn't say Prismatic Ending or March of Otherworldly. Okay, March of Otherworldly Light is not exactly free, but it's a lot of value for 1 mana. Affinity does a lot of stuff for free. Of course, Ruby Storm is outrageously mana efficient. Eldrazi Tron, or any of the Eldrazi variants are playing. They get a lot for their mana for very, very little. So basically, if we want to be able to compete with some other deck that's super mana efficient, we have to be somewhat mana efficient as well. So looking at the landscape, I've been tinkering with many different ideas in my head, but if I were to try to make Merfolk a little bit more competitive, I've been trying many different builds. I'm like, okay, what if we go blue-red? We have access to Ragavan. That's possible. And I played a few leagues with this, but unfortunately it's still a bit unstable. I didn't fix the problem of having a bunch of weak 1 toughness creatures. Ragavan was very good to enable like turn 2 Harbinger of the Seas, which got me some free wins. Turn 2 Svelun is awesome. What else? And turn 3 Champions of the Shoal was also awesome. Not to mention, so the mana ramp plus the ability to play stuff from my opponent's deck was great. And so this was felt like I was playing with Lotus Petals, yeah. I was playing with Lotus Petals, but it was like the ramp that I've always wanted in Merfolk. But there is the problem if you're up against something like Prowess, it's just as weak as every other card. Or if you're up against the biggest problem, if you're up against Boros Energy, our Ragavan is terrible. It's just so bad, and that's like one of the main decks we want to beat. I don't think I made the list, but I was also thinking of a Simic version, because a card like Endurance is in really good shape right now. Maybe we can get Endurance here. Endurance. I think Endurance is a card that's well, I want to say well positioned, for a few reasons. First off, it has 4 toughness, and I didn't mention this before, having 4 toughness is almost like a baseline for toughness, because you need to get around the first copy of Galvanic Discharge, but you also need to get around Flage triggers. So things like Thought-Knot Seer are more playable than, say, any other 3 toughness creature, unless it has some amazing ETB. So 4 toughness is still quite valuable in the metagame right now. So it has 4 toughness, but it also has reach, so that if your opponent has Guide of Souls, if they gave anything flying, you can still block it. And interacts with the graveyard, so we can exile somebody's graveyard if they put a Flage there, or they're getting really close to casting that Flage. Not to mention, there is a lot of decks that actually use the graveyard, whether it be Ruby Storm, Goryo's Vengeance, Amulet Titan. No Aftermath Analyst in the graveyard. That deck doesn't do anything. What else uses the graveyard? We have Living End. Living End. Sometimes Dimir Midrange if they're playing with Oculus. So like a good chunk of cards. Not to mention, you can sort of use it versus Affinity, only just for, like, to block their stupid flying tokens. So I think Endurance is actually really well positioned, but I don't know what other green card, and you'd get access to some enchantment and artifact removal, which would be useful versus Boros Energy, because I really hate Goblin Bombardment. So that's another possible direction to take the deck, but it still doesn't solve the fact that you have to play with a lot of these dirtily cards over here, which may or may not be bad if we can compensate these dirtily 1 toughness creatures with other stuff. But with everything that I just told everybody, I would like to move this direction. This would be more of a mono blue pitch spell. Whoa, this is not it. Sorry. I want to move this direction. There we go. Here we go. This is the deck. This direction, where this is more of a mono blue mid-range pitch spell deck, where we're playing with our absolute best Merfolk cards. Whether it be Harbinger of the Seas, Svelune of Sea and Sky, and Champions of the Shoal. And some of our better blue cards, like Subtlety. Now, there is one disadvantage to Merfolk right now, in that Force Negation and Subtlety, they're, like, good in the metagame. But the problem is, as a Merfolk deck, we ran out of cards super fast. Like, we just straight up run out of cards all the time, right? And the deal is, if we run out of cards versus almost any deck, then we just get completely trounced. Well, if we use a combination of Svelune of Sea and Sky to get that card advantage back, or even Quantum Riddler, which for all the other decks that are pitching their spells away, they're recouping their card disadvantage with, then we can also come back. So, like, sometimes I try to look, okay, what are other decks doing that we can apply ourselves? And partially this deck was born from the fact, as, like, you've seen, I like having Consigned to Memory in the main. I think it interacts with everything. Like, it interacts, like, a little bit with everything, or it interacts very hard with some other decks. Consigned to Memory can combo with Subtlety. I wouldn't mind hitting a Guide of Souls on turn 1. Like, if I have 1 blue mana, pass, they go Guide of Souls. All right, I Subtlety that thing, and I'm going to Consign to Memory, keep my Subtlety. I'm going to put you under pressure immediately, Boros Energy player, while still interacting with you later on in the game. And so that basically turns this into a Delver. And I'm effectively, like, spending 2 cards. I'm putting a Subtlety in play for free, and then pitching 2 cards to deal with the Guide of Souls on turn 1. But then, if we're playing with Consigned to Memory and Subtlety, then why don't we just play with the Quantum Riddler combo? It's not that hard to play. It's not that crazy to have a non-Merfolk in the deck. In fact, there's a lot of non-Merfolk there's a lot of non-Merfolks in this deck. And you have a 4/6 creature that is, it can't get Fatal Push. It's not going to get Dismembered. It'll have to get Super Galvanic Discharged. It can only die to Flage if they blink Flage at the same time. But outside of that, it's pretty resilient. And it encourages you to dump your hand. Force Negate something, Subtlety something, Quantum Riddler, draw 2 cards. I think between Uncle Quantum Riddler and Aunt Svelune of Sea and Sky, we can try to keep up with the intensity of the format by just pitching a bunch of cards for free. In fact, maybe there should be 4 Force Negation in the main. I do not know. I don't know. This is, like, completely new territory for me. I've never played anything like this, so I don't know what can or can't be done. Engineered Explosives is a card I found is very, very useful. It's actually useful versus a lot of decks. The only downside to this is that if you play it on one, so it's like it's not good with Ether Vial, because if you play it on one, you're going to blow up your own Ether Vial and your own one-drop creatures. So let's play a deck without Ether Vial. Like, we don't need Ether Vial. Also, Ether Vial is such a liability versus half the format, because if they go turn one, have like a pretty aggressive play, and you go turn one Ether Vial on the draw, like, you might have to be interacting with the board immediately. So like, it might be important that you have Spell Snare or Stern Scolding or Dismember up immediately turn one on the draw, so that you prevent the opponent from getting too far ahead, from burying you either in tempo or card advantage. What else to say about this deck? I don't want to say too much, but this is the idea. Like, we have to change, we have to adapt. And it's still Merfolk. Look, Sveilun still protects, gives ward to Harbinger of the Seas and Champions of the Shoal. And Champions of the Shoal, despite what people think, I think this is one of the better cards that we got out of Lorwyn Eclipse. In fact, I think it is the only good card we got out of Lorwyn Eclipse, because it can single-handedly deal with a Flage by itself. So if a Flage resolves, we play Champions of the Shoal, Champions wins. And as a result, I think it is a part of this deck. And if we stay mono blue, we get access to Cavernous Souls and a bunch of Sink into Stupors and so on. Now, I'm not saying that this has to be the end point, but experimentation has to start happening. We have to start splashing a color, or we gut everything that makes this deck weak and adapt it with cards that make it strong. And I think this is one possible direction, but the current range of how the deck plays out is, at least for as long as Boros Energy is on top, for as long as this stupid deck is on top, and we've been here before. Look, so I have been in a spot where the metagame was so bad, like in late 2017 and early 2018, I did not think I realistically had any chance of winning a tournament. I could play in the tournament, but I didn't think I had any chance of winning, because like Humans was really bad, a bad matchup. Lantern Control was a really bad matchup. Devoted Druid at the time was a really bad matchup, because we had no tools to beat those decks. Now we have tons of tools to beat those decks, but those decks are dead because now everybody has access to those tools. And so it's a very similar situation where, or it's similar in that we have a bunch of bad matchups at the top of the leader of the metagame right now. This is slightly worse in that, like, every deck is fighting at a different angle that's hard to interact with. So this is my attempt to interact with all of them. I don't know if this is too clunky. I need to have maybe a 2-drop on the board. I'm very flexible with adjusting this, but this is how I want to start it out. So I just want to give a little bit of an update and just giving my thoughts, how the metagame works, the decks that are involved in the metagame, and what I think is necessary to adapt Merfolk for the current metagame. And maybe with this in mind, maybe somebody else can take those ideas and mold and make your own sort of archetype. But you know, we gotta put some screws to Boros Energy somehow. And if we can't beat Boros Energy, then we have to most definitely beat everything else. Okay, anyway, this has been Nikachu, Merfolk Master, talking about Merfolk in the state of the year 2026.